Greetings, I'm Dear Leader Herbert Erpaderp, and welcome back to Derpograd. Today, we start with 5,046,000 some rubles. That might seem like a lot, and it is, but this city already has an appetite for fuel and metal, and yeah, metal's pretty cool, but I think it's also starting to develop a drinking problem. To avoid bankrupting ourselves, it's probably worth developing some exports. For the time being, I've halted construction on the farm and made the oil pumps a high priority. And look at these happy workers toiling away to make that a reality. Glorious Leader thanks you.
With payment?
Yeah, sure. Payment. Yeah, you'll get that. I was enjoying myself watching this road crane wiggle its boom back and forth and then drive off to the next job when I thought having the pump jacks is going to be really good, but before we can do anything with the oil, we're probably going to need a little bit more infrastructure, and somebody—
You mean you, right?
Somebody neglected to plan for any of that. Before glorious and powerful Leader Herbert could do anything about that, I noticed that train with the center beams for board export was having a little bit of trouble. It's too long. The neighbours don't seem willing to allow us to roll the train forward just a little bit. This will be remembered. So, leave it to Dear Leader to correct the issue. I figured it was acceptable to pay for track demolition and replacement with rubles. It would have cost a lot more in time and resources to properly connect the rail construction office and have it do the job. I got it to a point where it was functional enough. We can't be missing out on that handful of rubles for board exports now. That would be awful. Placing an oil storage tank was simple enough, and the construction office was more than happy to immediately send over a bunch of concrete and a digger. Positioning the pump was, well, it wasn't difficult, you simply click a button, but I probably could have positioned it a bit better. Well, the hard-working folks from, well, probably from across the border brought over at the expense of the Derpograd government, aka me, were happy to do a bunch of digging. Look at them go. With that progressing nicely, I figured now was the time to redo the rail here, which required removing that pipe which feeds fuel to the fuel station. The demolition office was more than happy to help with this, but they won't rip up rails. Bunch of babies. It took a while. It is probably hard work. Something glorious Dear Leader Herbert is absolutely familiar with, and eventually they brought a bunch of scrap metal back to the recycling plant. And look, more recycled metal to be incorporated into other glorious projects for the betterment of the nation. It's not really enough to make a difference compared to all of the steel we're importing, but I suppose it's a little bit better than a poke in the eye. Anyway, I made my modifications to the railway, which required removal of that gravel road in order to place the signals. I've heard that signals are kind of important, and there's no way we're ever going to need a secondary road to the border. Oil is going to be nice and all, but we can't just let the construction office sit idle. They would hate that.
We really wouldn't.
Upgrading the road to the iron ore mine is a good, valuable project, and not just busy work. And apparently, a bunch of people with little hand rollers is a better idea than using one of those road pavers or rollers that I bought specifically for this kind of thing. They probably know what they're doing. With my good, strong leadership skills, I've noticed that we're importing a lot of steel. We do need it, but it is kind of expensive. So, I made the good, strong leadership decision to order that board train to begin exporting some prefab panels. So now, we're getting a massive 5,600 rubles for an entire trainload of them. The economy is saved. Thank you, Dear Leader, is definitely what everybody is saying. We're down to about 4.88 million rubles. We're not bankrupt, but surprisingly, it does seem to be on the horizon. The good news is construction of that oil storage tank and the various pipes and pumps is completed and we're pumping oil. Unfortunately, whoever it is that keeps making mistakes has once again made a mistake. The pipeline running directly from the storage tank to the border connection doesn't pump oil, and we're going to need what they're calling a pump for that kind of thing. The construction office, always happy to help and never needing or wanting a break, are happy to leap into action and build a nice pump and some more pipe. Meanwhile, a stinky old house up here by the church, near where the farm is going to be, has been torn down by this mob of unruly citizens. They just kind of showed up and started helping when the demolition crew got there. That's the community spirit I like to see. This little bit of town has been given some new stuff, like garbage collection, a bus stop, and some of that newfangled electricity that the youth are always talking about. This is also where the construction office now sources workers. That's probably better than getting them from the border. The locals do have to catch a bus to get their food and clothing and whatnot, and that's probably fine. I can't imagine them being upset about that. The state dictates that riding the bus is fun. At any rate, they were happy enough to get on the bus and help out with the oil pumping station at the border, and they can eat all the lettuce they probably got as payment on the way home. And now the oil flows. Glorious. It's not really a lot of oil, and we've got about 30,000 fewer rubles than before, but this is an improvement. And if it isn't, at least we have oil, I suppose. The glorious and strong road to the iron ore mine has been completed. Those people with their hand rollers sure do work hard. I splurged and got the fancy road with the footpath and streetlights. Ooh, and it turns out that was enough to get workers over there. So now we've also got a source of iron, which I'm led to understand helps us play. Everything's coming up Derpograd. Of course, that farm site has mostly sat idle, though there was some progress. It just didn't seem to make sense to have the farm as a priority. But now that we've got things to export, we can probably focus on some of the more unimportant things, like feeding citizens. So tune in next time to find out if the farm does get built. I know you are all on the edge of your seats for farm construction. I can tell. Subscribe and check out Patreon and so forth. And thanks for watching. Farewell.